This is my very first gravel bike build and I'm super stoked for it. So I've built a rim brake road bike as well as a disc brake road bike. And as I've been cycling and commuting by bike, I'm also riding on light gravel bike trails on my way to work. And I've found that while my road bike is a great option to commute, I'm finding that the road tires just doesn't quite cut it. While I can go with gravel tires, I decided to look into a gravel bike as that seems to be the craze these days. Why not get a bike that does everything, goes on gravel, has wide clearance for gravel tires and wheels, but is stiff and fast just like a road bike. This video is a part in the series of my gravel bike build, and I will be using mainly AliExpress parts to build up my gravel bike. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, what I have here are Chaoyang. These are gravel tires. These are their gravel GP version, and these are 700 by 40C tires. The widest tires that I've actually ridden on my road bike is the 32C tires. So this is going to be a huge change. They do have some sort of diamond shaped knobby design, and I'm really looking forward to these. Now, this is my very first venture into Chinese tires. So, I am taking a bit of a risk here, but they do seem to have good reviews on AliExpress, so we'll try them out. Plus, they're also tan-walled, so they'll look really, really slick. They do have their factory name, which is the Jiangxi Rubber Group Co. Limited, and my assumption is that they're probably making tires for a wide variety of brands out there. So my assumption is this is not their first rodeo, just like most of the brands on AliExpress. Just make sure you check the seller reviews and you also check the product reviews to make sure that they're a quality product. I'm really curious to see how these fare on smooth roads as well as gravel and also snow, which we have here in Toronto. Now, for the main drivetrain in terms of the shifters, I have removed the rim brake group set that I had on my Scott road bike. I've swapped that out, so I'm going to be using a rim brake electronic wireless group set. So I will be using cable actuated hybrid disc brakes, which I'll show you in a bit. However, I will be using the Wheeltop EDSTX rim brake group set. This is a handlebar that is also from AliExpress. This is a 38 centimeter handlebar. Now, in terms of the crankset, this time around, I didn't go with my typical Shimano 105 Holotech crankset, mostly because I really wanted to see what type of cranksets there are out there on AliExpress. So I did end up getting this Evosid Crankset. Now, I have seen some comments and videos, including from Trace Velo, that some of the cranksets on AliExpress are not quite up to snuff, including the axle cracking. So I am taking a bit of a risk here. This is the Evosid 24mm spindle. It is AL7075 T6 aluminum. That's what they claim. Am I a bit worried about this aluminum spindle crankset? Kind of, not gonna lie. However, I will be trying it just to see what it's like. Again, it is a bit of a risk, but I'm taking it, so we'll see what happens. This is a 165mm crankset. Now, the dimensions are slightly different than my former Shimano 105 Holotech crankset, including the Q factor. So I will be using a set of spacers in between for the bottom bracket width. That's first and foremost. And also, I might be removing my pedal spacers to reduce some of the Q factor because if I'm not mistaken, this crankset is about 8mm wider than the Shimano 105 Holotech Q factor. Now, next up is the Evosid chain rings, and I did opt for 50/34 teeth. So this is their one-piece chain ring. This thing is pretty wild if I'm going to be honest with you. This is a single piece machined. Single piece, however, there are these 5 pieces of steel or aluminum. I'm not entirely sure, but I did see Trace Velo's video and this is where his failed. Some of these just popped out, which is really, really sketchy. Now, I'm hoping that this fares better, but I really won't know until I put them on. So this is a one-piece 2x chain ring, which is pretty crazy. I honestly don't know how they get this because that's a lot of machining in one piece. It would take quite a considerable amount of time to machine this as a one piece. So I'm not really sure. We'll see. This is supposed to be lightweight, and I mean, we'll see how long this fares in terms of longevity. So I will say this design is very strange. And what I mean by strange is that this surface, the surfaces are stepped. So they are probably, I want to say 500 microns, like 0.5 millimeters to 1 millimeter height difference from this portion to the chainring. So when I screw it in, because of the stepped difference, I'm not sure if it'll screw properly. So we'll just go ahead and lightly screw those in. It is a series of 3 T25 screws. Now I probably will add some form of Loctite or something on these. I'm just wondering, because they're stepped, will that make an impact on how this chainring attaches to the crankset? I'll have to install this and ride it to see, but that is one thing that I did notice for this crankset. Now for the bottom bracket, I did opt for a ZTTO bottom bracket. This is the T47 24i 24 millimeter spindle and internal bottom bracket. Now I have used a ZTTO bottom bracket before in my Felt IA16 triathlon bike, and honestly I will say that it's fared really well in terms of, you know, running it through training rides, indoors, outdoors, as well as my races. I've run into rain and rode it through rain, and it's lasted a full season and it spins really smooth still. Now we all know that gravel is a bit more intensive in terms of a riding environment, but we'll see how this fares. Now, what I will say is that worst case scenario, I could swap out the bearings in case the bearings are a bit lower quality or lower grade. However, the machining of these cups are pretty damn good, so I'm just gonna go ahead with it and try it out and see what happens. And now for the cassette, you can tell this is an AliExpress package because it comes shipped like this. Now this is an R7000 Shimano 105 cassette. I did want to just go for a genuine Shimano 105 cassette because this ended up being about $40 to $50 Canadian, and it's a brand new cassette, as you can see, and I have no issues with this, so I just decided to get a genuine cassette. I did opt for a 32 tooth cassette, and the reason that I went with 11 speed is because most of my bikes already run 11 speeds, so I don't really need to go to 12 speeds. Now for the chain, I've opted for a KMC 11 speed chain. Now I've purchased these from AliExpress before, and honestly they're great chains. However, I will say that the anodized part of the black material in between the chain links, that does seem to wear out when I do a cleaning. So, I mean, it's not the best, but I wish that it was just completely silver so I wouldn't have to worry about the anodized paint coming off. However, these chains seem to be working fine for my use. Next up is a Lunje, not really sure how you say that. This is a 100 millimeter stem from AliExpress and at a very affordable price. So I will be using a handlebar with stem instead of a one-piece combo, mostly because I want to dial in the fit well, and that gives me the full option of customizing my reach, stem length, stem height, etc. And also when I'm doing internal cabling for the brake cables, I don't have to worry too much about fitting them through the stem and arrow handlebar. Now this here is for the headset assembly. This is the headset cap, and this allows for cables through the headset cap as well as the C-ring for the bearing. Now these are made of plastic, so it's quite interesting. I haven't seen plastic versions of these yet, but I will likely sand the sharp edges down just a bit just to avoid friction between the fork and these pieces, because we all know what happens when you get the fork of death. These here are Muqzi Crankset spacers or bottom bracket spacers. These are specific for 24 millimeter spindles, and you do get the option of 3 millimeters, 2 millimeters, 1 millimeter, and I believe about 0.5 millimeters as well, and a couple others. Now I will be using a set of 4 millimeters on each side of my bottom bracket, so I have ordered 2 of these, and these will come in handy. Now in terms of tires and tubes and wheels, I will be using the Ridenow TPU Tubes. These are their slightly newer versions with the white valve stems, so they are the improved versions that don't leak as much or barely leak at all. And these are 65mm valve lengths. Now, as for the wheels, I will be using my Hygge Shun wheels that I used to run on my Hygge bike. The reason I'll be using these is because I already have them anyway, so I'll be using these with the Onirii brake rotors, as well as the gravel tires that I showed you, and the Ridenow gravel TPU tubes. So I'll be putting those on this wheel right here, and we'll see how the tires fit on this wheel. Now, in terms of brake calipers, I will be going with the Onirii BR05 or III Pros. These are the hybrid disc brakes, meaning they are cable actuated. However, they do have a fluid reservoir inside. So these came off my Hygge bike when I swapped over to the Wheeltop hydraulic. However, these are available, so I'll go ahead and use these for my gravel bike build. Now, in terms of a seat or saddle, I am going with a specialized power comp saddle that I got off Facebook Marketplace. I'm not going with an AliExpress saddle because this is tried and true and tested. And although I paid about $80 Canadian for this, I find that this saddle is the one for me, so there's no point in trying out an AliExpress saddle. That, my friends, in a nutshell, are the AliExpress parts that I'll be using to build up this gravel bike build. Now, you're probably wondering, what frame am I going to be building this up with? One of the most important things about the bike build. I might give you a teaser right here, but I will say it is a Chinese gravel frame, and I'm hoping that it will be an awesome frame to ride gravel, as well as turning it into a road bike as well during the road season. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you've done your own gravel bike build. Let me know also in the comments below if you've used any of these AliExpress parts that I've shown today, and what are your comments on them? Like, are they faring well, or are they a do not buy? Until next time, ride on and have a good one.